Hey y'all, welcome back to Dots and Beyond. My name is Beth. Today we are going to talk about my reading in August and set up my reading journal for September. Let's go ahead and get started. When last we met, we had set up for August. I had revealed our August Poe pick as The Pit and the Pendulum because it is one of my favorites from childhood. It was the first Poe story ever read to me, and I am going to go ahead and rate that on a 5-star. It is still way up there for me, even though it had been a little while since I had read it. We'll talk about that more a little bit when I'm setting up for September. I was also in the middle of my Jane Austen listening binge. I did finish Emma and Northanger Abbey, which was predicted. I'm also still reading How to Take Smart Notes for the Bujo U book club. We'll have to finish that in the next couple of days. I did read Spindle Splintered by Alex E. Harrow, and then I have also read Theft of Swords by Michael J. Sullivan. Jumped into yet another epic fantasy series because I can't help myself. And so that's where we are at. So here is my little review of Spindle Splintered. I did do a review of this on Goodreads as well as my website, I think, if you want to go ahead and check that out. I do love a twist on a fairy tale. One of my favorite parts of A Spindle Splintered is the first line. I'm still keeping my first lines back here, where it says, Sleeping Beauty is pretty much the worst fairy tale any way you slice it. And I do very much appreciate that vibe. I do love a retelling, and I just love Alex E. Harrow's wordsmithing. If you've not seen one of my journal setups, I do some favorite quotes on this side. I do some thoughts about what I read on this side, and I very much enjoyed this novella. Moving on, I finished my Emma and Northanger Abbey Jane Austen binge. I knew I was going to end up with this one weird page off here to the side, so I just kind of did a Jane Austen mood board and stuck it in there to fill up some space. Here is my review of Theft of Swords. I have rated it 4 stars. I don't have my review into Goodreads yet. I need to get that updated. This is epic fantasy. It is 650 pages. It's a bind up of 2 novels. There are 3 bind ups, so there's actually 6 novels each in the Rhaenyra Chronicles. I have had the books, all 3 of the books. They were all this big, so this is volume 1 of Rhaenyra Revelations, not Chronicles, Revelations. I did this in a hybrid fashion with both listening and reading. I didn't stick any tabs in here because sometimes I was on Audible and sometimes I had the physical book. Very much enjoyed it. I'm a sucker for epic fantasy. I love a thief tale. This is definitely, obviously it's in the title, a thief tale. For me, the 2 main characters in this, Hadrian and Royce, the pinnacle of fantasy bromance. They are up there with Frodo and Sam or Legolas and Gimli from Lord of the Rings. It is just a great relationship, and you jump into it as a mature relationship. They've been working together for years. They are best of friends. They pretty much know everything about one another. Even one of them thinks they're revealing something and the other one's known it forever, kind of a thing. Classic fantasy, sword and sorcery, theft, a nefarious religious organization. All of those tropes are in here. I really just loved it. I also wrote 2 things. One, classic fantasy themes are showcased in a modern-ish tale, so our setting is medieval fantasy, but the language is definitively not. The language is very definitively modern, which is interesting. Also, this feels very much like the origin story of Legends and Lattes. It's right off the bat, Hadrian, one of our main characters, keeps talking about retiring. And from what I can tell with Legends and Lattes, we've got this orc who's retired and she's living the low life in one of these little villages like they would have had here in Theft of Swords. It just had that vibe, I was like, he has read Theft of Swords. He is a fan and was like, that's a great idea for one of these swashbuckling characters to just retire. It is chunky. So did make it all the way through 650 pages of that, and we're ready to set up for September. And our September Poe pick is going to be The Purloined Letter. We are going back to our Detective C. Auguste Dupin that we read in July for Poe. He is the one recurring character that Poe has. We had read Murders in the Rue Morgue, and another one of the stories that includes this detective is the Purloined Letter. I'm going to stick this in here, and then we can talk about Fit in the Pendulum while we set this up. That is not at all straight, and I'm not going to worry about it if you have not watched these videos previously. I have had this ongoing struggle with the washi tape that I was putting at the top of this page. This is the same one from last month. It's just black. I had a stripy one that I just thought I'm going to use for my post setups all year, and I'll be done with it, but I have continued to lose it. I don't know where it's at. It's so low. It's close to the bottom. This is what I started with, and at some point I had to jump to a red, and I found it, and I switched to a black because I lost it again. Things in our worlds that don't make any sense. Again, Poe pick for August was The Pit and the Pendulum. The Pit and the Pendulum takes place during the Spanish Inquisition, the very end of the Spanish Inquisition. We have this guy who wakes in a precarious position. We do not know his name. He is imprisoned by the monks with the Spanish Inquisition. We know not why he is imprisoned by the monks. Which, not unusual for the Spanish Inquisition if you know anything about history and that particular time in humanity. Humanity does a lot of awful things to one another in the name of anything really, but very often religion. And so we have this guy who found himself not only imprisoned, but imprisoned in a most unique fashion where he has a pit that he cannot escape, and then a pendulum comes into the mix. The pendulum being a scythe attached to the ceiling and coming down at him. Two things for me are interesting in this story. One being that of the nature of the telling, we know right off the bat that he's okay. I don't think anybody thinks he doesn't escape this because of the manner in which he's telling the tale. You know, he gets out of it. And yet, that does nothing to temper the suspense that Poe builds in the telling of this story. And that is just one of my favorite things he does in The Pit and the Pendulum, is just keep the reader on the edge of their seat all the way through. It always seems like life or death. Even though we've basically been told our guy's gonna make it. How is our guy gonna make it? You don't know what transpires there as he talks about the utter darkness and about being completely alone except for his thoughts and the rats. Always rats. Indiana Jones. No, he hates snakes, but his dad hates rats. He'd never make it past the rats. This is the story that's being told, and the entire short story is our character telling it after he has been released or some version of his stream of consciousness, and he is saved miraculously by the interference of the French who invade, and he is rescued from the monks of the Spanish Inquisition. If you had not read The Pit and the Pendulum before, let me know what you thought in the description box below. Let's have a conversation about it. If you had read it, did you like it more the first time? Do you like it more the subsequent times? I don't know that I could distinguish when I was young the emotions of knowing our character's going to be okay and yet still going down that path of despair with him as he discovers where he is and the unusual method that is meant to be his death. I very much appreciate it, more so even as an adult, I think, than I did when I was younger. It is always going to have a very soft spot in my heart because it was my introduction to Poe. Okay, so The Purloined Letter. I've gone ahead and marked this as a detective short story. It does still have some horror elements. Short story, fiction. It was published in 1910 and has 7,572 words. If you want to read along with The Purloined Letter, I will link both text and audio versions down in the description box below. You are welcome to join us for the month of September. We would love to have you and your thoughts when we roll around to October. I am going to change up my format here just a little bit. Before, I was just putting in a list of what I was reading, and then my little reading tracker down here. I'm going to keep this down here. I'm going to add some more structure to this to help me remember when I'm starting and finishing things. And I am going to grab a shorter ruler. I'm going to grab a 6-inch and make some boxes. I got all of these wrong. and that's why we keep white gel pens around. Coming into September, once I finished Theft of Swords, I jumped right into Rise of Empire. I have the physical copy of it as well, so I'm doing the same thing. We're doing a hybrid sort of listening and reading, and that is by Michael J. Sullivan. And the reason that I changed this structure so that I could try to keep track of when I start and finish a book. So started this one on August 21st. Still reading How to Take Smart Notes for Bujo U Book Club. I'll need to finish that this week in preparation, half of next week, in preparation for our final 2 discussions on this book. One on September 11th, just in Bujo U, and then one, I think, on the 15th, where we actually have a Q&A with the author, which is pretty darn cool. Started it on July 25th, and again, I've just been pacing myself with where the book club is now. It might smudge, but I think I like that top line. And then if I need to add any more, I can add them down here. And while I'm highlighting lines, I think I want to do the same over here. Then my little monthly reading tracker in the shape of September. If you were with me last month when I bought my novellas, you know I bought A Spindle Splintered along with A Mirror Mended, which is the next one in that series. It is loosely on my TBR for this month. I hope that I can get to it. I also bought What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher because I was buying novellas. I think I'm going to keep that for October just for the vibes. So I bought my novellas, but now I've started to spread them out just a little bit. And like I said, I have started Rise of Empire, but I have not yet put my first line of Rise of Empire, so this is where my first lines live. I am thinking about putting my first lines in a separate journal so that I always have those with me from year to year. Stay tuned. So here's the first line of Theft of Swords. Here is Rise of Empire. Can't remember what it is off the top of my head. And it is Amelia made the mistake of looking back into Edith Maughn's eyes. Edith Maughan being a particularly terrible head maid. She's awful. And Amelia being a delightful character that we learn a lot about in this novel. She gets risen essentially above her station, and everybody doubts her, but she turns out to be a very intuitive person. And then I use a gray to put the name Rise of Empire. Michael J. And one of the reasons I finally decided to jump into these, even though I've had them forever, is because there's also a prequel series now that explains some of the things that are already accepted in these novels, some things about society and whatnot. So it jumps back in time and tells a little bit of a prequel. Alright, jumping to the front, I have updated my index. Here's Emma from August that I added. And there is, let's see, Theft of Swords. So we've got my index updated, my goal. Still trying to remember if I have added Jane Austen to these, whether I'm counting it or not. I may have to recount these before we do October, but I'm at least going to mark the one for Theft of Swords. I'm caught up here. In fact, I'm a few days into September. Release radar. Some things have changed here. I did go ahead and pre-order Fragile Threads of Power, which I had written in before, but I had not ordered it. And I've also ordered Starling House by Alexi Harrow, which comes out October 3rd. So I think those are the two big things that I added to this. I'm more of a mood person when it comes to what's coming out and when, and I just kind of, if I find out that something, I don't go digging for things. If I find out something's coming out, I put it in here. But I don't go like reading lists of what's coming out in October 2023. So, yeah. My backlist, the one thing I did get to do here was fill in our little half moon circle for Theft of Swords because it was on my physical backlist and now I've read it. So it's been a while since I think it was March, I think was the last time I got to fill in one of these circles. But now I've done it. Now it's done. At least one of them. My pick for September, we're doing the Purloined Letter. I haven't added anything to my fear of missing out list. I don't jump on the hype train very often. My book haul is pretty much the same. I haven't bought anything else since I bought so much in July. I did skip my book of the month as well for September. And then I need to added Fractured Fables, which is Spindle Splintered. So I added that to my series tracker. But I need to add Rhaenyra. Like I said, I jumped into a whole nother series to track. So can't even spell Rhaenyra. Alright, so the Rhaenyra Revelations. It is essentially it's 6 books, but it's in 3 bind-ups. So we're just gonna the 3 in there, which means I know that there's only those 3. The prequel is a whole different thing. That means I can block these off because there's no books there. And I have completed the first one. Alright, haven't DNF'd anything else. Like I said, I'm really bad at that. And then Fave. I've gone ahead and added Fable. I think by the time we get to the end of the year, it's for sure going to be in there. And then, of course, jumping ahead to all my months. Here is September. And just need to add our little gradient sticky. And all I do there is just trying to line up the last month and see where it fell. I'm not real picky about it. I've got one up there that's way off. It messes up all the ones below it, but that's okay. Yeah, I didn't get that on there straight either. Maybe I'll fix it later. But there we go. We have got September set up. We are ready to read the Purloined Letter. Go ahead and check off where we are in September and then move on. Now, it's probably going to be safe because my reading slowed down from the beginning of the year, but if I had kept pace at where I was at the beginning of the year, these 2 things were meet up tight, and it might still be super tight. I might have to tip in some pages. Don't know what that's going to look like. Haven't faced this problem before because my reading in the last few years has been very thin, and so I liked having everything in a traveler's notebook. Still like the traveler's notebook. Like I said, I might move my first lines into another notebook just to give me as much space in a traveler's notebook as possible, or I might just start using 2 a year. And that would be okay with me too. I'd totally be okay with that. And that is my reading wrap up for the month of August, my birthday month, where I jumped back into epic fantasy. Also picked up a couple of novellas. If you like this video, y'all know what to do. Give it a big thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next one.